or the question is, how much work and expertise does it take to set up this on a device? If everybody has a Google account and you want to use that, so for example at wisc.edu, everybody has a Google account, and we can ask them to log in for that for credit. Then we can tie it to credit possibly. If not, anonymous polls, and you just share it with everybody. But on your phone, type in things like what is your name, and how easy is it to type in a paragraph. You don't have to actually type in a paragraph, but and do this quickly. And you'll note that on a lot of the devices now, all the smartphones, they have a microphone by the keyboard. So if I would like to, comma, I could just type in my answer by my voice, period. Answer a checkbox question, all of the ones that apply. Hit the drop-down menu. You'll see that there's scrolling if you have a mobile device. There's scrolling in there. You can choose an item, 1, 2, or 3. Hit something on the linear scale. You'll see that that scrolls across as well. And I've got 2 examples of how to do the linear scale there. Might you use this type of a grid or the other type of a grid? Which one works better, vertical or horizontal? Different things to think about when designing forms. I've got a date question in there. How easy is it to use that? Time question. These are all different types of questions that we can do in Google Forms. You don't have to do all of them. If you'd like, you can have them watch a video, and then finally hit the submit button on the bottom. And up on the page here that you are, oh, we did not do that. Oh, that's right. They've changed this. So in 2012, this is a part of the story actually. In 2012, the only way to do this is with this gadget called Awesome Table. And Awesome Table was really neat. It was a widget that let you show really awesome results in different types of forms that look a lot like the kind of summary of responses that you might have in the Google responses. And since then, Google added their response table with the graphs and such. So there's a new way of doing that now, and I was committed to finding a new way of doing that, and that's what's on this formative feedback page. So under the easy section of periodic, how are we doing Facebook, that's how are we doing feedback, we can have a chance right now. I think, did I get done with this? Yes. I'm gonna come back to this part here a little bit more and show you some more examples of how that works once we get down farther on in the medium on the back page, in situ feedback, Google for clickers. But let's start off with actually giving you like 5 minutes to get in and create a Google form using some of the formative feedback activity sheet. you'd rather not follow the sheet, you can follow along. I'll do one up here, and you can just sort of follow along what I'm doing up here on the screen. I'll go to forms, create a new form, entitle it anything I want. And then adding questions is as easy as clicking on it, choosing what kind of question you want. If you're used to Qualtrics, you'll notice there are not as many choices here. That's both good and bad. It's bad because I would really like to have an option where the 7 things on the Likert scale are pictures of smiley faces to sad faces. And I can't do that on this one yet, although I can do the linear scale. But it's good because it's forcing me, and I'm saying this with a little bit of gritted teeth, it's forcing me to be constrained in how I look at this for the usability of the students. Not as catchy.
Survey type questions, or are they ones where you can put in, like for multiple choice, which one's the correct answer? Or are they just for getting feedback?
These are just for getting feedback. So if you use these, there is no automatic grading that I'm aware of yet. There are gadgets that you can use for spreadsheet plugins for Google Sheets that allow you to do automatic grading, and the K-12 world has got a lot of discussion on that. I have not seen any use of that in higher education, though there's really no reason not to, other than Google's not used a lot in higher education yet. Yes, this is not a good replacement for your D2L or Canvas quiz or Lulu quiz yet.
Okay.
And there are possibilities, but currently, much like using it as clickers or a student response system, it's clunkier than the options that exist.
Okay.
Unless, Lauren, you've seen something that,
Well, Flubaroo is what I use.
that's
But
one that came up.
it doesn't, there's no way to do automatic feedback, but with Flubaroo, you can send an email to the user or the student with feedback. So you can email individual students telling them about their responses. They just don't get it in the moment that they're taking the assessment.
Yeah, so that's an add-on. Flubaroo.
We just started using quizzes.
As a plugin, Google Sheets plugin?
No, it's a, what it is its own tool
Okay.
for quizzing, and it's like super easy, and you can, assign things. Now, we don't do grading.
Right.
per se, so, in extension, but, or at least my part of extension. But you're able to take the results from it, and you can do it live, or you can do it as, within a time period, and one can log in to do this, and they can do it from their phones or laptops or whatever. And, you can export as a spreadsheet.
Oh, great.
So it's not a Google sheet, I mean, it's Excel, but you can easily translate the Excel spreadsheets into Google Sheets.
Okay. So once you get your questions done in your quiz, you just click on the send. Well, you can do styling here if you'd like to. You can say that they have to log in and can only respond to one thing. You can add your response message when they get done, like, congratulations, you've given me feedback. You can let them go back and edit their responses if you want them to vote more than once. So for example, I just used this for grading applications for one of the awards on campus. And we wanted our award committee to use the same form for their whole stack of things, so you can have them set up to submit multiple responses. If you have more than one page, which I suggest you not do for feedback, because students, if you want them to finish it, they won't do multiple pages probably. But you can give them a progress bar, so that way they won't be like, okay, I clicked forward, and I clicked forward again. When is this thing gonna end? Give them some sense of how long they do this. If you want them to not copy each other, this gets to the, if you're ever gonna use this for quizzing, you can have them shuffle the question order. Under the color palette, you can choose different colors, and there are an option to use different themes that they already have. And I bet there's an education one here somewhere. Work and school, yeah, the first one. And each one has different color palette and different pictures, I guess. Or you can upload your own photo as well. Or connect it with your Google Plus albums. So when you're ready to send it or get it done, go ahead and finish it up. And we are right now on number 4 of your easy periodic, if you're following along. You can send it via an email, which I never do because then I have to type in all of their emails here. But what I will do is probably grab a short URL, copy that, and then send that in an email on my email list that I have somewhere else. Or I can use it as an embed code and actually put it in an announcement in D2L or something like that. And we'll talk about this in just another, and that's the next one, I think. That's 2 and 2. Embed the form as an iframe on the course site. So I can either send it as an email at night, and that way you know that they, or as a text message, or on Slack, or on Facebook or Google Plus communities, or however you'd like. If your students don't respond to emails, which more and more people are not. Or you can embed it. So And then maybe most important, again, this is not a technical skill, but tell your students what you're doing, why you're doing this, and what you're going to do as a result of it. And if you don't do this, then it just becomes in one more thing that you're asking them to do with no real good reason to do that. If you tell them, and I often tell mine that please help me design this course. I'm testing some things out with you because my job is, as an instructional designer, course designer, to try out a lot of these things. Help me see what's effective, because it will affect not just you, but other people, and that sort of touches on their, why they're here, to make the world a better place and get rid of some of the bad education practices. So they will suffer through bad education practices if this is not a good one, in order to make it better for the next group of students that has to deal with it or not. It also gives them a sense of agency in your class, because they won't leave thinking, it doesn't matter what I say because my instructor doesn't care. If they make changes or give you feedback and you say, thank you for that feedback, what I'm going to do next year is make these changes, or what I'm going to do next week is, instead of doing this, I'm going to do this other thing because you didn't like this or it didn't seem like it was effective. They feel validated in that. Or you could say, thank you for that feedback, nobody liked it. How are we going to make it better? We're going to do it again, but we're going to tweak some things on it for the reasons that I have. And maybe by explaining the reasons that you have, at least now you know that there's this great unhappiness about it, and you can explain why you're doing that, and that will sometimes help them feel better about suffering through it again. The muddiest point feedback, same type of process. It's just that you do it later on, after class, and not 3 times a semester, and not many questions, but just one question about what it is that what they needed that day. Embedding the form as an iframe. This is super easy in all of the LMSs that I've tried, except for Lulu.
And this is different than the embed code thing that you showed, or is this the same?
This is similar to the embed code thing, except now you have to do it in D2L or in Canvas or in Moodle or whatever. And so this is just an announcement in D2L here, and it won't look like this until after you've added in this iframe. And putting in iframes it looks very complicated at first, and then you figure out the code and how to decipher it, and then all of a sudden it's easy. But I've probably embedded 100 things in the last 5 years, and I still, not every time, but often I will go to Google and how to embed an iCode or iframe, and I'll just take that, and all you have to do is, oftentimes, is replace whatever's within these quotes with whatever page that you have, and then use the rest of, I'll just take the whole thing and I'll just replace that source code, that source URL. And what I might also do is adjust the width and the height. Sometimes for the width, I'll do things like, I want it to be 100%, and that works in some things, and it does not work in other things. And if it doesn't work, so here, we just made it 100% instead of 760, so we'll hit save. Is that width? Yes. And hey, it seems like it worked. I'll update that, go back to the site, to the here. And hey, it worked out great. So it doesn't have to be a set number of pixels in D2L right here. In Canvas, the same sort of a process, except instead of having the little greater than minus source code thing that they have in D2L here, instead of this guy down here, it's up here. But otherwise, it's that same iframe code.
If I recall, Canvas actually doesn't let you change the size of the iframe. Like it's got a standard size that it will make it no matter what.
On the mobile device, we found this out, and now is a really good time to talk about that, James. Thank you. So on Google Sites, we saw that there's this whole thing, and you can scroll up and down through that. And on the iPhone version, or on the Android version of it, on the mobile version of it, it's all also very nice there. However, stop it. On the Canvas iPad app, it also worked out well. On the apps for Canvas, for the mobile apps, it actually doesn't embed at all. So the iframes don't work on the Android side or on the web side. But wait, did they do it on the iOS side? We checked that out, didn't we? Or did we?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't. But it works in WordPress as long as the mobile pack plugin that I had set up was disabled. So it starts to get a little bit funky as to what shows up and what does not show up. Come on.
You can always put in the link.
So, and you can always put in the link, and that is actually, yeah, probably a lot easier. One of the cool things about not putting in the link is if I were using this in class and I said, okay, everybody, this is the question I'd like you to answer. Ah. All right. And let me give you 3 minutes to work on that. Okay, everybody got that in? Here are the results. And just as with clickers or Top Hat, you can watch these results go up and down as they vote. You can do this with the process on the back page, which is the in situ feedback Google for clickers. And this was tricky for me to figure out, but once I figured it out, it's super easy. However, again, it doesn't really work on the embedded. I have not been able to figure out the embedded thing, though your response is perfect. Like you could just have it put in the link and then it'll work fine. Because Google Forms looks great on the mobile, unless it's embedded in an iframe. So the advantages, you can have it, so as a graph, you can put in all kinds of graphs with Google Sheets. If you like, one of my responses here is so that you can have all of the counts as they come in here on the far left side, but then you can also have multiple versions of that, and you can see that. That's an awesome hit one. You can see that here. So if we were all in this Canvas site and we logged in and we answered that question, all of these would change immediately, even as we typed in the questions the multiple times that we typed them in. And that's fun, because then the students can start to see, oh, I'm not the only one who likes hamburgers. Other people like hamburgers more than they like hot dogs. And they're like, oh, wait a second. And then we have another thing, we talk about how hot dogs and hamburgers are made, and we see all the hot dog people move over to the hot dog. Wait, hot dog move over to the hamburger side right after that, and that's kind of a fun before and after example of in situ, in-class clippers, super response. So, what I would like is to show you that on this page, the best location for information on how to do this, for inserting a graph or chart that is a live one, is actually this video that I found, because a lot of videos will teach you how to insert a chart by taking some of the responses here, copying them, creating a chart over here, if you already know what the responses are. But to create a response that changes on the fly, you have to, collect a whole set of data before there's any data there. So it requires using questions that are not that complicated, that you can find the answers just by clicking a row or two of responses and then graphing those. So, oh, goodness.
It was me.
That was you? Good job. What did we just vote for?
I voted for a couple. iPhone and laptop.
Do it again. So Amy's in on the course, and the iPhone is definitely getting vote stuffing. She just got a new iPhone last night.
So what I'm curious about, if you go up to the form menu
Yes.
and do the show summary of responses,
Yes.
will that be live?
Go ahead and add another iPhone. Yes. No. No. No.
There you go.
Yep.
That's really interesting. I just hit refresh.
Oh, you refreshed.
Oh, you hit refresh.
Yes. Now, this used to, see this view all responses up here? 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, right next to this was show analytics or publish analytics. And they took that away. Before you could take this response and embed this, and now you can't. And that's
That's Google.
Google.
They give it and they take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a link to Wave as well, and then
We're a Google Apps for Education shop, and so I know how to do all the forms. I wanted to hear the pedagogy and everything around it
Great.
more today. Is what I came for. But we try to write, documentation, and it's like the minute we write it, they change it.
yes.
And so we're okay, forget it, we're not writing documentation anymore for Google stuff. It's like we just try to, but even their own stuff isn't necessarily up to date, so it's very fluid.
It's
So that's been the biggest thing to try to convey to our faculty and staff is how fluid it is, and don't get too comfortable, but be comfortable with change.
James and I are going through the same thing with, all right, as a university, we support Google Apps. How do we support Google Apps if they're changing it every week? So we can't republish a KB doc on Google Apps every time that they put something out, because that would require a whole department of Google App watchers and changers and investigators and
Right,
testers.
because they make a change, and then you've got to figure out, well, what was the old thing, and what's, what's the change?
Find out that
Or
it's
is it-
changed.
They're pretty good about publicizing the changes, but
And we're talking about having a feed on our wisc.google.edu page, which doesn't exist yet, but it will, of the live feed of the Google Apps updates for the people that want to pay attention to that. And if they go log into the thing, they might just see, oh, Google Docs now lets you do something here, and Google Contacts is being updated. So it's more transparency, but what a change this is from a few years ago in our field when we had such tight control over, we're not going to move from D2L version, whatever the version is 3 years ago, until it's been tested 7 years, then we'll move on to it, and a bunch of things broken in between that time. But at least we know about them because we have 7 years of documentation of how they're broken still. And that's kind of an interesting thing. I've found that with assignments on technical issues where I'm asking students to use technology, it's rarer and rarer that I have to actually do some training other than a quick little intro, and then I will do a hand-wavy thing that says, this is how it works today, tomorrow it might be different, if it doesn't work, figure it out, ask questions of your neighbors, work together, Google it.
Right.
And maybe, when you Google it, search by, in the past hour, or updated in the last week, or whatever, but not, otherwise you're going to look at Google Docs from 2010 documentation. Excellent point about it being an ever-changing field, as with everything else that we're doing. It's just, the biggest challenge with that, I think, is how do we get instructors to be flexible? Because that's extra work, and why can't it just stay the way that I want it to stay, that it worked? And then eventually they just want to throw the laptop out and go back to the chalkboard.
One of the things that I found, at least around Google Plus and Google Drive and all of the apps in Google Drive, is that there are, like with the forms, that change. They had a pretty radical change in the last few months.
Yes.
And there was always that link of you can use it the old way. Go back to the old way.
Which
And
is this little guy who's like running away. I think that's the best icon ever. He's like, no! Out of here. Last fall when we gave the presentation on using Google and Qualtrics, I had just put the screenshots together, and like 2 days after that, they had changed it. And so that was right when they did the switch. And I was like, I'm not going to redo this because why? It's the same thing. Things change. So I think we
I've
mentioned
had some interesting issues with the new update on this, in that people, when they go to respond,
it.
if it's a type in your response kind of thing, they can't figure out where to click to type it in. It's not as obvious because you don't actually see a box.
Yeah, it's a line.
It's just kind of a line. And so I had a number of people the first time I pushed out a new survey that sent me something back saying, I can't enter my responses.
And just the other day, I shared this link, which is the edit link, to a group of people who were asked to fill out the forms. And so they were in there trying to fill out the forms going,
But I took editing.
yeah.
okay, and then everybody after that saw, they kept editing it. So I've used a lot of Google Forms, and I'm still having learning moments, or ooh, that was a dumb mistake moment.
Well, some of it too is a usability issue, and when they built it this way too. That
Yeah,
it's not as obvious to the end user, which it should be, because a form to fill out should be an easy thing to do at this day and age. We've been doing it for years.
they want it to look good on the mobile devices, but to do that, so it looks very good when it's shrunk down to whatever, but to do that, they lose out on some of the usability issues. Yeah. Molly, you talked about some of the pedagogical questions. Let's address some of those.
Actually, I was just kind of curious to see what you'd say.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily that I had a specific one. We're using Google Forms. So one of the ways that we're doing it is we pushed out
kind of tablet?
Nexus tablet.
Okay,
Nexus
with
7.
a stylus?
No, not necessarily. Well, yeah, no, you could have a stylus and a cover if you wanted, from our unit. But, because we have people going in, like some of our faculty literally go into people's homes and they want to, they're doing, surveys about food safety
Sure.
and, and helping folks with nutrition and things like that. So they have something really easy, and then they can get, responses, not have to rely on their audience having the device to to get feedback. And so we've been using Google Forms a lot for that kind of, right now, here, please
Yeah.
fill this out.
Well, and the blended UW program, or is it blended fellowship, or which one is Timmo using the iPads for getting the responses? So they want, paper responses for feedback is much higher, than any electronic. If you send people off to a website, you're not going to get as many responses. It's tremendous difference in responses versus papers, because they have to hand something in on the way out versus, oh yeah, I'll get to that tonight, and then they never do. So we have leftover iPads from a program a couple of years ago that are just sitting in Amy's drawer. And why not have that out there and say, here, everybody gets an iPad, leave it on the way out. But there it is, it's already set to that page, opened up. That way we've got the spreadsheet stuff, and Amy doesn't have to enter it all by hand from a piece of paper.
Right. No, it's a great way of getting participants.
So what kinds of questions work well for getting feedback from students?
I think the shorter, if you have like multiple choice or Likert with the possibility of a text, that's the best, because they'll be like, oh yeah, I can answer this, click. And then, because if you try and frame it as like, I need you to write a paragraph, then I think you have difficulty getting students to do that.
Yeah, even though they're really good at this right now, Andy's has a little microphone button so they can say, so Professor McKay, I thought today's class was pretty ... okay, period. That they can do all of that, and it does it beautifully, but
Yeah,
It's not
students,
gonna happen.
but it's good. I mean, I understand students feel busy most of the time. I'm actually thinking about, because I'm teaching an online course this summer, about incorporating some kind of quick Google feedback after every module or topic or whatever, just as a like, did this format work for you? What did you think of it? Kind of thing. So I'm toying with that.
And I think it works very well in a blended course where they're already on the site. Because then the link is right there, they already have their devices open, it's right there and easy. If your class is paper and pencil, or you have a laptop ban and you want to have them, okay, now everybody pull out your device and go to this website, bit.ly/mobile connect. Okay, maybe, but not a lot.
One of the things that I like is the ability to decide at the end whether or not the students can see responses posted by other people. And then what I have done with things like that is I use something called TriCiter, which allows you to post a topic and vote on it. So it kind of pre-prepares them for discussion. They've seen what other people are thinking, and then that can kind of lead them into the next step. Thanks.
No ideas yet. So how does that work then?
So then you can add an idea,
Okay.
and you can vote on each other's ideas.
Ah. And I have my name, that was an optional thing, or not.
Right.
And I can take a picture of you or a thumbs up or whatever. Okay. How does that work? Do they?
And then they can, so then what you do is you get to class and you choose to talk about the, 4 top ideas and you divide them into groups, something like that,
wow.
right? And then you can rotate too, but they talk more because they're talking about their ideas.
Yep.
As opposed to my handing out ahead of time, okay, here's your card with your idea that you're gonna talk about.
Yes. I like that.
So.
It
but
makes it
what
more
the-
applicable,
Yeah, what
hopefully.
the form does is kind of do that sort of pre-brainstorming to get them thinking.
Well, and they get to add that at any time, any place,
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah. I like that. And I'm sure that it's also,
What do you teach?
I deal with languages, all languages, so.
So everything, really.
Pretty
Yeah.
much, just in a different language.
There you are.
neat. Okay. Tri-sider. One of the things I was gonna follow up with you, James, was in this one, this was for the conference. I did things like, okay, here's a standard grid type thing. When might you use this? At the 12 months and the 2 years. It's not bad on a laptop, but on a mobile device, it's terrible because you get to about April maybe, and it just gets cut off by the screen. So you, as a user, you don't even know that you've got other months as options, versus when might I use this in the vertical format. That works much better on a mobile device. The long paragraph questions, as James said, it might be a little bit harder versus the checkbox ones. And
And I was even getting the question text would get cut off.
the question text.
So anything, it just seemed like there's a width, and anything after that you can't scroll, I couldn't get it.
On the Bitly Mobile Connect, it should have twisted around.
Huh, Mine didn't.
Yes. So on this one, it's got a really nice little wrap
Oh,
around, but not for your.
not for mine.
Are you on Safari? On that or Chrome?
Yeah, I think it was Safari.
And when I was using, I used Safari on this, and I had to like push it sideways.
Okay.
Because I was seeing everything. not-
Interesting. Not a mobile version of it.
Right.
Okay.
It's been having
Things you have to,
fun.
especially as more devices come up, different types of devices. So you have the Surface, we have Apple, some people come in with the Windows machine, some have the Nexus tablets, and some have the iPads, and what all works in different techniques and categories is a good question.
So what, I'm curious because you created that form, in a site rather than in Google Forms. What do you see the pluses and minuses between the two?
Google Sites is, I think, clunky.
It's,
Clunky to work with. I did the same thing here on my personal blog WordPress thing, and it works much better, I think. There's that. Here's where the summary of responses should be if you were able to embed that as an iframe, which you can't.
it's interesting, it's allowing you to do some iframes but not others.
Well, it lets you do the iframes of the sheets, and of the docs, and of all kinds, YouTube, all kinds of things, but not the summary of responses. That one does not seem to work at all, for some reason. I don't know why. But it's kind of neat because it's even interactive here, right?
Yeah.
And a video on how to do that I've got. This is again, these are just of the sheets. So this is where the sheet is embedded versus when the sheet is published. The sheet is published on this one, so the difference is just taking this information and grabbing it and putting it in an iframe versus when you publish to the web. And even with this, you can have the entire documents, you can have specific sheets on that. This is the automatically republish when changes are made versus the manual refresh option down here. And so the difference with that was when it's published, you don't see the menu bar or all of the other extra cells. If it's not published and just shared, you see all the menu bars and all the blank cells as well, which is weird and hard to. But the good thing about this published as the whole thing is, as the admin of that, I can go in and be like, oh, we accidentally added too many iPads. There actually aren't as many iPads, so let's change that. And I can go in and say, oh, Amy voted twice. Here, I'll actually go in and delete some of Amy's votes.
I voted a lot more than twice.
Or 5 times.
Or 5, 7 times, yeah.
So one thing, and I might have missed you doing this, but one thing I noticed with the new forms is it's not as, like when you're looking at the responses, it's not quite as intuitive to see it in sheets. Like it used to be, like if you go back to the form.
Okay.
Where
Thanks,
you were
Mary.
editing it, wherever you were editing it.
Yeah, this one.
There, that one. So if you click on responses,
Yep.
you have to know that
That this thing
that is the, see it. in
is
sheets.
open it up in Google Sheets, yeah,
I
because
just
otherwise
thought
it's
that
just
for
a
your
weird green
reporting,
cross.
To make sure that people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, that's good point. And there's a lot of things in the new forms that just, the usability really did go down, I think, in these forms. So,
I had to step out for a little bit soon, maybe I covered this, but is there an easy way to collate text responses and show them?
If you went to the sheet and you sorted, because that's like a spreadsheet, is that what you're thinking?
I'm just thinking, like, in class, if you wanted to ask a question with some text answers, is there an easy way to then show that?
So I looked into this, and there are plugins for creating Wordles type things from Google Sheets. And I looked at 2 of them, and they were both really terrible, I thought. There are people who swear by them, but and your mileage may vary. But for me, because I'm not super spreadsheet friendly, like I think Margaret, who loves spreadsheets, would be like, oh, here, blah, 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 done. But I had hard times figuring it out.
So there's not an easy, intuitive way to do it, though it is possible.
Not super easy and intuitive.
Yeah, I did ask somebody like Margaret to do it for me.
But if you
And
have
then I
free form
felt-
response, it still seems like it would be a little bit hard to do that because you don't know, the variety of ways people could say the same thing could be problematic in trying to pull the data together, wouldn't it?
What is it?
Free response?
Well, no, I'm just talking about collating in the sense of pulling it all together, not necessarily organizing the responses,
Oh,
but just
okay.
pulling it together so it's easy for everybody to quickly see what other responses are.
And in that, and now this isn't the live response thing we found out, but in the view show summary of responses, if this one had open-ended questions with text in them, it would organize that automatically by
Yeah.
question.
So it would kind of look like this.
No,
Well, that's not totally
then that's something that everybody would,
Can everybody see? Yeah, I don't,
or is it just,
so who can see
It's just
that
gonna be a list.
page of the responses?
You can tell it whether you want everybody to see. You can, by publishing the analytics, if you choose to publish analytics, then everybody can see the summary of responses. If you don't publish them, then they can't.
Okay.
You can also, with sharing permissions, like you would do with
Mhm.
anything in Google, you could just share, create a shareable link. Share that link.
Trying to look at some of the past responses that I had. So up here are that was a question that was, that was their names, but you can see that there's ... So what it does, it truncates down to a certain amount.
Was that an old one?
That is an old one, yes.
Okay, because, the new one will actually list
All of them.
all of them
Wow.
in a row as opposed, in rows as opposed to truncating the responses.
Okay.
So that did improve. One thing that's improved.
There you go.
Good. The other thing that we can I want to briefly mention is Awesome Table, which I started with in 2013 or whatever, when it was a widget for Google Sites only. It's now its own thing, and so this is the same connection with what device are you using for. So this is, I think, live, although I don't see anything from March 30th, so I'm all of a sudden questioning that. Why is that? There should be a whole bunch of new iPhones on March 30th, right? And maybe that's this. All right, well, let's see. iPhone 23.5% versus iPhone 24.2%. 8. Okay. Save. So yeah, it does say the last responses were March. Oh, that's the last view. The live view. Yeah, I don't understand, but Awesome Table was another option, and I wish I could remember some of the names of the word portals that let you use Google Sheets. Slemma, S-L-E-M-M-A. Come on, but I deleted all of them. But this one was interesting because it lets you do a lot of really interesting charts, including things like this is the wrong one. donut graphs and the ones where you have little people representing the different types of things. So how many people in this block are red people versus blue people versus green people, representing, you know, the different factions of whatever the data is. And there were several other options like that. But it was really complicated for me and unintuitive for that.